Hey, I'm Mark,
And I'm Craig.
and this is Songwriters Tales.
Yes, it is.
Craig, episode 2 with the amazing Michael Peterson. And
That's correct.
I say amazing because I followed his career as an artist, great artist, amazing songwriter, but just way beyond that, just an amazing human being. And this has got to be one of my favorites. I just don't know what else to say. The guy is so cool.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. I'm not even going to go through the list, Mark. I'm going to
Mm.
throw it on our audience and our listeners to go to part 1 of Michael Peterson if you want to know about him and listen to all the episodes. That's all I'm going to say because it will be worth, as I said, the price of admission, my man. What do you say?
Let's do it.
I was in my early 20s, maybe in my mid 20s. And I was, like I said, trying to play my songs for people and hoping they were as excited about my songs as I was. And it wasn't really working out that way. And one day a friend asked me if I would go sing at a men's prison. And I'd never done that before. I was a little nervous about
Yeah.
that. And I thought, what are they going to do to me if they don't like my songs? Like, what's going to happen?
This could get
Well,
real.
yeah, I mean all the stuff, So I go and I go to this room and there's about 12 or 13 inmates, and they come and they sit them on these steel folding chairs, and it's in a cement room, and I mean it's the antithesis of everything you'd want in a venue.
That's right.
You know,
Except for a captive audience.
You did have a captive
right,
audience,
yeah,
but
well, yeah, exactly. Only thing is, like the worst audience, the most difficult audience I played for was 5 middle schoolers who were in detention. It's like,
Oh my,
try to get them to
dude,
laugh,
that's funny. That's funny,
so
man. Gosh.
so here I am with all these guys in this prison, and I just, I jump off the cliff, man, and I pray my wings will open, and and it was amazing what happened. I never forgot it. That's why all these years later I'm telling you guys this story. By the end of our time together, I've spent about 3/4 of the time with goosebumps, shivers running up and down my back. These guys are crying, they're laughing, they're hanging on every word, and I haven't seen this happen for me.
Isn't
Seldom
that
if ever,
amazing?
you know. And at the
And,
end of it,
and they're grateful. Mm.
yeah, at the end of it, I'm packing up my stuff and I'm by myself in my head and I'm saying, wow, what just happened? Like, how could these songs that don't move anybody suddenly be so magical? And I hear a voice, not the way I hear your voice, but I hear something inside of me. And here's exactly what it said. Did you ever stop to think that maybe those songs were written specifically for these men for this day? And that's why they haven't moved other people. And I
okay, now
thought,
you gave me goosebumps.
you know, and
Same
and
here.
and then that same feeling inside of me. Here's what it said. It said, "Is that okay with you?" And I just thought, wow, and I don't know what happened at that moment, but the struggle I'd had for so long of feeling like maybe I'm not getting it. That was around the time that I told you that I got that phone call from uh from the Gaithers. And on the
Mhm.
heels of that moment when is that okay with you? And I said, yeah, that's okay with me. Maybe that's a lesson for me. And then things started opening up after that. And I just think there's lessons that we learn and there's doors we walk through to get to another door. And if we're willing to just show up and follow your passion and don't get sidetracked. Like my football coach used to say, if you're gonna go digging for gold, you have to move a lot of dirt, but you're not looking for the dirt. Don't get
Right.
focused on the dirt, focus on the gold. So I don't know, you write 100 songs, you're hoping to get one that's like everybody wants to hear it. Right. And so that takes a certain kind of countenance and a backbone. to basically say, yeah, that's what it is. But if you love
You
it so
know,
much, you just keep
oh,
keep going. Anyway, I'm talking too much, but I get excited about
no,
this.
No,
you're
man.
that's why you're here.
I need to like talk to you every day, man. You're like a life coach for me. I was gonna say when you said that, I watched a show when my kids were little. It was a show called Joan of Arcadia, and it was about this girl who starts hearing from God, and she's like 15, and she's everywhere she goes, a different, like, it could be a little kid, could be it could be an old man, but it's God telling her to do things.
Yeah.
And so she starts doing these things. And one time she says to him, "Well, why are you having me do this? I mean, how's this going to help me?" And he said, "Well, sometimes it's not about you, Joan.
There you go.
Some Sometimes I'm using you to help somebody else."
Yeah,
Yeah, there you go.
And
man.
Have you written that
and what
song?
you just said,
Have you
no,
written that?
but
You should write that song. I
well, I
love
tell
that.
you what,
What a
if the
great
three of us
twist.
want to write it together, we'll call you, Michael,
I just love the
because you
story. It's
inspired
a
it.
great
You
story. Hey, sometimes it's not about you.
right,
And you know what? In a
right,
way, the depth of that song isn't have to be a finger pointing. It's freedom. It's freedom. Like it doesn't all have to be about me.
right, right, right. So you know, I- let's segue a little bit. Let's talk about your work with the troops, because I've seen pictures of you with all kinds of different ranks and things of this, and you on stages singing. What got you into that? How did you kind of start singing for the troops like that?
Well, thanks for asking. 9/11. I'm on the treadmill in the YMCA in Franklin, Tennessee, and the TV's on, and I see what everybody sees. And the next day, I go down to a recruiting station and I try to enlist. But I'm at that point. I've just had my third. I have to go back and look at the dates, but I've had 5 top 40 singles, and my career is rolling along. But I'm so deeply moved by what I see. I just think I have to do something. And they basically say to me, "You're too old." I was 42, I think, or 43 at that point. They say you can't join. So I was out of my mind, thinking that I should, but that's how moved I was by it. So I said to my agent, my booking agent, I said, "Hey, if there's anything I can do, let me know." So I don't know, a few months go by, and 6 months, 8 months, something like that. And I get a call one day, my agent, he says, "Hey, there's a spring formal at Fort Campbell, and there's going to be 1,200 service members and their dates. They're getting ready to ship off to Iraq. Would
Mm,
you come and perform for them?" He said, "They don't have a budget." And I said, "I don't care. Well, I'll go down there." So I go, and I get there and I do my thing. And, some nights, guys, are magic, like that day in the prison where you just say, wow, that was
Yeah,
incredible. And then some days
yep.
you just play your songs and nobody's hair catches on fire, and
mm-hmm.
you show up and you do your thing. So that night was the second of those that nobody's hair caught on fire. There was nothing about it that was like, nobody was crying. Nobody was giving me a standing ovation. It was just one of those nights. So I get done, I'm packing up my stuff, and this guy comes up to me and he says, "I work for the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army. He'd like to meet you." So I follow him and I meet General Dick Cody. He's the Vice Chief. He's a 4-star general. And he says, he says, "Let's talk." So we talked for a few minutes. At the very end, he tells his XO to get my card. Well, I'm a songwriter and a performer. I don't have cards. So I go to the bar and I grab a napkin. I said, "Here's my songwriter's card." And
Here's
I
my
give him
card.
that. About 2 weeks later, I'm standing filling gas in my big Tahoe at a gas station near my house out in Arlington, Tennessee, in the middle of nowhere. And my phone rings. I answer it, and somebody on the phone says, "This is so and so. I'm calling from the Pentagon. And my boss told me to call you, and he told us that we're supposed to work with you." And I thought, no kidding, I thought, this is some of my drunk friends, and they're calling me to pull my chain. So
Of
I almost hung up
course.
on the
Who?
you know, and because my friends were like this, that's how we treat each other. So we're
Right.
songwriters, we're artists. So anyway, I don't hang up on the guy. It turns out he's for real. And he says, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. I don't know anything about the military. What can I do? I don't know. Really, I said, I'll tell you what, if I knew more about what you guys wanted, maybe I could answer the question. So he said, I'll tell you what, he said, let's fly you up to Baltimore to meet the Army Field Band and we'll do dinner. Okay, great. So I fly up to the Army Field Band up in Baltimore. I fly to Baltimore. We go to the Army Field Band, Fort Meade, I think. And I meet the Army Field Band and I spend the day with them. And in the middle of this meeting, the woman who's in charge of this whole shebang is a woman named Jill Chambers, and she is a full colonel who is the head of strategic communications for the whole Army. And her boss is General Cody, who is the guy who when he got back from this meeting, he walked into her office and threw my napkin on her desk and said, work with this guy. And they'd tried to do a couple of things with some country artists and it hadn't worked out very well. And so she wasn't the least bit interested. But the day of my appearance, she thought to herself, if General Cody comes in and asks me how this went with Peterson and finds out that I didn't go down there, he's not going to like it very much. So I hate it, but I got to go down there. So she jumps in her car. She's really resentful, doesn't want to go. She comes in. We end up meeting her, spending the day together. And at the end of the day, she says to me, hey, you want to come back to the Pentagon with me and meet the Chief of Staff of the Army? I'm like,
Whoa.
yeah, okay. So we got in the car, we drive back to the Pentagon. I sit for almost 2 hours with the Chief of Staff of the Army, just talking. Anyway, long story short, they end up asking me to basically go do appearances in front of troops at different events. And I didn't ask how much money. I just said, okay. And will you guys cover my expenses? So over the next 4 years, they sent me all over the world. And
It's awesome.
that woman who didn't want to go take the meeting, she and I fell in love and we got married. And
No way.
yeah, and that's why I told you that story, is to say she changed my life. So she's a remarkable person. She's one of maybe 60 women that's in the Army Women's Hall of Fame. She was Department of Defense Woman of the Year. She was the primary force behind what became a program called Comprehensive Soldier Fitness, which was the very first program in the military to directly address and assist people that had post-traumatic stress.
Wow.
No program had ever done that in the military before. And she took it to the Chief of Staff of the Army, and he basically was very attuned to it because his son, how things turn out in life, his son had committed suicide that year because his son had post-traumatic stress. So when Jill came to him and said, hey, we got to do something about this, and we got this program we put together, he said, you're absolutely right. And so he sent a message to all of his senior leaders saying, we're going to do something about this. And because of her initiative and her grit and her backbone in standing up to all of the people who told her, you can't talk about this, she ended up, becoming Department of Defense Woman of the Year and retired a full colonel, and probably ruined her chances to be a one-star general because she basically stood up to a bunch of generals and said, no, we're going to talk about this. Anyway, I could go on and on about my wife, but and it would be well worth our time. But she
Well,
was at the
I was
Pentagon on 9/11 and got her own post-traumatic stress. She was
no
working for the
kidding.
chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and she got post-traumatic stress, got injured at the Pentagon on 9/11. So she had her own journey and her own story. So as we fell in love and we got married and we started going down the road together, I had many opportunities to continue to support her and her work speaking about post-traumatic stress. And I got many opportunities, like, I don't know, she worked for General Pace when he was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And he said to her, hey, do you know anybody that would want to go on this USO tour with me? And she said, yeah, I do, Michael Peterson. So, I mean, it was really my wife in many ways that And, that led to 11 tours, Iraq and Afghanistan and Korea, over 250 shows for servicemen deployed in the desert in Afghanistan and Iraq and Kuwait. And that was all born really of me just saying, can I do something? Can I help somehow? And I didn't know where it was leading. And that's how life is, right? You have 50 feet of headlights in front of you, and you just drive into your 50 feet of headlights, and life shows up. And I ended up, having the privilege of just discovering what it really means to be an entertainer. And I'll just end with this story. But we're in a little forward operating base in the middle of nowhere in Iraq, and I mean, look at my studio, my little office here. It's small, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
the building that we're in is about the size of my office. That's my stage, and that's the audience where they sit. So there's going to be room for about 7 or 8 people, and we're at a place that nobody ever goes to entertain, because I said to General Pace, send me the places nobody goes, because everybody wants to go to the big show. I want to go to these other places. So they would put my PA in a golf bag, and they'd throw us on a Black Hawk, and off we'd go. And so we showed up at this forward operating base, and these guys had just gotten back. There was a dining area, a little dining facility. And these group of guys who came to my show had just been out on a patrol where they'd been basically searching for insurgents. So talk
Mm.
about being on point and being stressed. So these guys come into my show, and for the first 30, 40 minutes, man, these guys are sitting like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, I only have one job here. I'm not here to be anybody. I'm not here because I'm somebody and I had a name or I had some hit songs. I have one job here. My job is to try to get them to drop their shoulders, take a deep breath, and relax a little bit. So if I can get them to laugh, if I can make them laugh. And so it was these experiences in Iraq and Afghanistan. They taught me really what my job is. My job is to get people to laugh, to help change their vibe, right? And to help them
Mm-hmm.
become engaged and to feel better. And that experience over those, 7 or 8 years, it taught me so much. And it changed me as a performer, and it changed me as a communicator. So I mean, I would like to say, people say, well, look how much you've done for the troops. I just like to say, look how much that's done for me.
Well, that you say that, it's interesting you say that because every time Craig and I can't speak for Craig, but I know every time I've written with Craig and written with the troops and they come up and they hug us afterwards and they say, man, thank you so much. Thank you for giving us your time. And I'm like, I was like, are you kidding? Thank
Yeah.
you. I mean,
Yeah.
because I always feel like I left there getting way more than I gave.
Yeah.
And just
Totally.
from being around these people.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
so I know exactly what you're saying. And man, well, and also I wanted to say this too. I see you followed, you said, I just want to do the right thing. I want to help people. And you ended up getting an amazing wife out of it too. So,
That was the best
you
blessing.
know,
I look back at my career and people say, well, you had all these hits early in your career. What happened? Well, I don't know. That's probably a whole collection of books to tell that story. You know, but I can look back now and I can say if my career hadn't gone how it did, I would never have met my wife. And I can tell you guys, the last 13 years that we've been married have been the happiest years of my life. And I haven't been in the
that's
spotlight.
incredible.
I haven't been, trying to chase that gold ring anymore, brass ring anymore. These have been the happiest years of my life. So I'm just grateful. I'm grateful every day. People say, hey, isn't it great what happened to you? And are you proud of all of that? I, you know, I'm grateful more than I am proud. I'm grateful. That probably describes what I feel more than anything else, because you and I, all three of us, we know a lot of people more talented than us that for whatever reason, they never had the opportunities we had.
Yeah.
I'm just great.
Amen.
I'm great.
Amen.
Yeah, it's real freeing. There's a being an artist, being a songwriter, um, I don't know if you guys are in the same place as I am, but I'm pretty emotional. I mean, I'm a tough guy. I can be tough, and I'm I get it done. I don't give up. But boy, I do emotionally play games in my head, with that. And the thing is, I have to keep coming back. And Mark and I have this conversation constantly about songs because we're still writing, and in fact Rex has quite a few of our tunes in the catalog that he's pitching regularly now, and so we're just always waiting. And Mark and I go, you know what, we just have to do it, and we do it because we love it. We love it. And do you know Ed C by any chance, Michael?
I know of
The
Ed
produ-
C. I have a lot of respect for Ed.
He's an old buddy of mine. In fact, he was just on the podcast,
Oh,
and it's a
he's
great
a
watch.
genius.
Yeah. What's that, brother?
I think he's a genius. He's amazing.
He is absolutely amazing. I've known Ed for about 35 years, and when I first started going to Nashville, I went out there to write hit songs. It was chasing that golden ring, like you say, chasing that carrot, and that was my whole focus, was to write hit songs. And I did that for a few years, and I remember sitting in the studio with Ed one day. He goes, "Craig, stop trying to write hit songs. Just write from your gut, man. Write from your heart." And that about that time is when I started listening to a lot of Leonard Cohen and John Prine.
Yeah.
Back to my roots, back to
Right.
Harry Chapin and
Yes.
Gordon Lightfoot. I mean, and
Yeah.
those are and Jim Croce.
Talking my language now. Yeah.
Well, I'll be 70 this year, so you and I grew up in the same exact.
Yeah.
When you were mentioning all these people, I'm going, yeah, I'm there. I remember hearing. Well, finish that story. That's when all of a sudden things started changing from my writing. But I
Yeah.
can remember I'm going to just take a stab at this. I just moved to Atlanta from Miami, so I was probably 12 years old or so. And that song by the Bee Gees, "I've Just Got to Get a Message to You," came on the radio. And I don't know what it was about that song, but that song emotionally gripped I mean, it was a guy talking, he was on death row, I think is what he was on in the song, and he was about to go get executed, I think is what the storyline was.
Wow.
But there was something musically, melodically, and the words and the way that I guess it was Robin Gibb that sang it, that was
Right.
so emotional. As a 12-year-old, I had no clue what he was talking about. I just could feel the emotion in the song, and it profoundly affected me. And
Wow.
I've remembered that ever since then, even
I
in
think we
songs.
all have songs like that. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember the first time I heard "Witchy Woman" by the Eagles, and I remember thinking, again, I'm like you, I didn't know what they were talking about. I didn't know any major chords, minor chords. All I knew was I was completely sucked in
Yeah.
by the whole the whole package, the raspy
Yeah.
voice, and
It
so
was
I
our
mean,
on-ramp, wasn't it? It was an on-ramp to our future.
He's a good old boy, never meaning no harm. Did you know that Mark Waldron, my partner with Songwriters Tales, is the son of the producer and creator of the Dukes of Hazzard? That's right. And if you go to episode number 24, you're going to meet Timothy Baker, who is an artist living in Nashville, but from Hazard, Kentucky. Go there.